Welcome back to another State of the Metaverse. This is episode 9, where we try to bring you all the news and exciting innovations and developments from the Metaverse space. Every episode, every week, we have somebody on the show that is an expert in a specific part of or field that has to do with the Metaverse. And this week, we have a very exciting, very cool guest for you. His name is Jasper Verbeet, and he's going to tell us, hopefully, everything we need to know about smart contracts. Jasper, how are you doing today?
Hey man, yeah, good. Thanks for having me on the show. Yeah, my name is Jasper, and I've been working with crypto on and off for a couple of years now. When I was a little bit younger, I was doing some Bitcoin mining on my computer, and then after a few years, I started.
When you were a little bit young, you did a little bit Bitcoin mining. When was this?
Yeah, this was high school, so it must have been at least 7 years ago or something. So
wow, how old were you? Can I ask you?
I'm 23.
So 7 years ago, so you were 16 years old. You were doing some Bitcoin mining.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you still have any of them?
No, unfortunately, no. It was on an old laptop.
This is a story that.
Yeah, exactly. And I didn't, by then you don't really understand the value of Bitcoin and where it's going to go. You're like, okay, cool. In 2013, we had $1,000 Bitcoin. Nobody realized we could go back to that number and go even higher, like the 60K we saw last year, or early this year. Well, no, it was last year, pretty sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it was last year. Yeah, we've only been down since then.
Yeah, and then after a few years, I started investing as well, losing a lot of money, going into all the altcoins.
Altcoins.
Yeah, exactly. I remember the first altcoin I knew was the Gulden, which was a Dutch altcoin. I'm not sure when it was anymore, but it was super cool. And then after that, I got some Ripple as well. Bought Ripple at €1 or $1 or something, somewhere around that.
Yeah.
Then it went all the way back to 20 cents, forgot about it, and sold it again a few years later. So that was my introduction into crypto, like everyone else. And then actually last year I met my current business partner, and we were like, okay, we have to do something in this space. I mean, this is going so quickly, and this is so cool stuff. And we were both software developers doing some, working for different companies or Web2 companies. And we were like, okay, we have to do this now. So we jumped in and we started a Web3 development company. We realized there's a lot of people that are in this space that are not building stuff. So we thought, okay, that is the good angle for us because we're developers. We want to build stuff. And yeah, that's what we ended up doing. So this is how Beyond Labs was founded.
Cool. Very cool. Hey, and, but I mean, you skipped over a little part there, man, because, no, don't worry. I was introduced to you, through some of the people here in the office as somebody that knows like a shit ton about smart contracts. But you started with your story with Bitcoin and how you started mining it. But that doesn't explain to us yet, how did you get into smart contracts? How did that happen?
Oh, super accidentally. I think the first time I heard about smart contracts was also, that was obviously a little late. I'm not sure when I first heard about it. Was just through YouTube videos. And I was still in Web 2, but back then I think it was during university time, and I was just watching videos on smart contracts, and I was like, okay, what the hell is this? It's smart contracts, okay. It was very abstract to me. And I think that was the first time I heard about it. And then even back then, I've seen some of the original presentations from Vitalik about smart contracts and introducing them. Super unprofessional, obviously, but I was like, okay, this is super cool, but what can you do with it? And it took a couple of years for the smart contract stuff to really take off. And I think only for the last 2 years or something, smart contracts have been getting adopted well enough, and there's enough infrastructure that you can actually do useful things with it.
Yeah.
And then that's also obviously what we do with our company, smart contract work, but also...
Before we get into that, I mean, a lot of people will be listening to this, but some people will be tuning into this, they want to hear about the metaverse. And maybe they've heard of a smart contract, but they might have no idea what a smart contract really is. So could you try to, dumb it down for normal people? Explain to us, us dummies, what is a smart contract?
So the explanation that we use for our clients that don't know a lot about smart contracts is a smart contract is basically the same as a regular contract. It basically tells you that, okay, if you don't do something, for example, if you don't pay, there will be this fine. But instead of that, there has to be people that enforce the smart contracts, like a court system. You can do that automatically. Technically, that gives you a lot of options because you can take out a loan, for example, for a certain cryptocurrency. And I'll get into that a little bit more in a minute. But you can take out a loan, and then if the loan, if you don't end paying back the loan, then the smart contract will basically enforce that you will pay back the loan by taking capital from you, so liquidating you somewhere else. And then the beautiful part about this is that this is a smart contract, but the crypto token itself is also a smart contract, or the NFT you're buying is a smart contract. They're all smart contracts that can interact with each other.
Why is that so beautiful?
Because that basically gives us a foundational layer, especially around the EVM change, which is Ethereum and its brothers basically and sisters. It gives us a layer, a fundamental layer where everything can basically attach to and interact with each other, speaking the same protocols, speaking the same languages. And we're currently at a point where everything is, like, in every corner of the market, there's smart contracts trying to solve solutions. So, for example, we know NFTs are doing some art stuff. We know there's smart contracts for taking out loans. There's smart contracts for taking out physical loans. So, for example, you can use your Tesla as a stake, and then that will be taken from you if you don't end up paying your loans. But there's also smart contracts for basic administration processes or loyalty programs. And all these smart contracts can talk to each other, interact with each other, depend on each other, because they all speak the same language. And one of the examples that I always give from my background is there's this entire organization called GS1 in Europe that basically makes sure that all the product information, especially for food, is controlled and is valid and adheres to certain rules. And there's a big communication protocol in the back end that makes sure that the product information can be shared between EU members and stuff. But we can basically take that concept, migrate it over to the blockchain, make it do the same stuff, but then basically add a whole lot of new functionality to it.
And it's fully automated, right? Fully automated.
Everything is fully automated, and everything is dependent and attached to each other. And with the entire, because the whole space is open, opposed to what we know from Web2, where there's just a few companies that basically regulate everything and have their own software behind the scenes. And because it's all open.
Let me ask you a question, right?
Sure.
When you explain this to me, I'm an enthusiast. I work in a metaverse company. Obviously, I think lots of this is amazing, super cool. I mean, the possibilities of smart contracts and, now NFTs, which obviously is another application of smart contracts, really, when you boil it down, are amazing. And yet at the same time, if I told my mom, right, if I told my mother, who was born in 1944, that, a smart contract, she would probably freak out. I don't know have you ever watched the movie Goodfellas? It's a mafia movie.
Yeah, a long time ago.
Yeah. Well, the movie basically starts with one of the guys, right, that becomes one of these mafioso when he goes to the bank with his dad in the 30s. And his dad goes to the bank to get a loan. The whole movie starts with the fact that his dad doesn't get another loan. And therefore, his family falls apart and everything goes to shit. And that eventually leads to him later on in life being like, fuck that shit. But, I'm just going to be a mafioso, do whatever I want, get money, be rich, never going to have to deal with that shit again. When you tell me how a smart contract worked, you just said something like, it'll just automatically liquidate your position, right? Then I'm thinking to myself, I know for sure that my mom would freak out because it removes all the humanity from the process, right? What would your answer be to that?
Of course, there's some parts. So that is, I think, there are some solutions to this, but this is a very well-known problem of the whole blockchain ecosystem. So if you, for example, if you do a transaction on Ethereum, you buy an NFT or somebody steals your NFT, there's basically no social way of getting things back. There's not a bank or a lawyer or a central constitution you can go to that will help you get your stuff back because it's immutable. The whole point of blockchain is that it is immutable. But on the other hand,
now we're getting go on. I have some questions about that immutability as well. Let's go on.
Yeah, but there are some solutions to that. So, for example, there's this amazing protocol called Immutable X, and basically what they do is they're an insurance policy, but they protect you against DeFi hacks. So if your DeFi platform gets hacked or you have your funds stolen or your funds stored somewhere, DeFi or Metaverse even. Let's take Metaverse as an example. If you have your tokens stored or you bought something from Decentraland or the Sandbox and that platform gets hacked, you lose a lot of money, something we saw with Axie Infinity, of course. Then Immutable X they can basically insure you against it. And they have this whole court system and different layers of people that will vote together, and game theory that will keep them in check and make sure they do the right thing. That will help you basically get your money back by insuring it.
So what you're really saying is that yes, technically what I said is right. It removes humanity, but because there's a global effort of developers like yourself to work on this, and they also, find problems and find challenges. There's already also a development around the world of organizations like the one that you just mentioned. What was their name?
Yeah, sorry, I said Immutable X, but I meant to say Nexus Mutable. I misspoke.
Okay, Nexus Mutable. That are already putting in place structures and frameworks that will allow us to put that humanity back in different ways. Just in a way, that will be, so we're speeding up the process on the front, we're automating it, we're creating incredible opportunity and potential, and yet at the backside, we're already creating like this, how do you call it? A vangnet in Dutch, a safety net, so that in case, all of this automation leads to the wrong end result, we can still do something to help people out. I like that.
There's even some standards that you can implement in your smart contract. For example, if you create an NFT, there's some standards you can implement to protect against hacks. So then you can attach your NFT project to a court system, not Nexus Mutable, but something else, maybe Arrogant Court or something. Then if you say, okay, my NFT got stolen by someone or I lost it or whatever happens, then you have to provide proof to the court system, and the court system is the only one that has the power to transfer your NFT back to your wallet. So that is, again, a safety net that developers can implement to solve the issue of the lack of social control on blockchain, basically.
It's very cool. Cool.
Yeah, it's super cool. It's amazing.
Super cool. I love it. Okay, so but you said something super interesting, right? And I, of course, told you I have some stuff prepared here to really, get your expertise out of that. You said that the blockchain is immutable. And I always love it because when I tell, my friends and my family, the blockchain is immutable, it can't be hacked, then they always instantly come back to me and they say like, yeah, but that's nonsense. On the news, I see that, this and that. And according to DeFi Yield Research, $1.25 billion loss was reported in 2022 already through smart contract exploits. So how do I explain, to my friends, my family, that are not so into the crypto space or into the metaverse space, how do I explain that? I'm saying on the one hand, blockchain is unhackable, and yet still somehow with these smart contracts, there's these exploits and money gets stolen. I think one of them was the Ronin exploit, which amounted for a total of 550 million. So how does that work?
So these smart contracts are basically applications that live on the blockchain, and the blockchain itself is immutable, which actually
when you say they live on the blockchain, what does that mean? I mean, is it like a
that
fungus or how does that work?
No, it's not exactly the same. So the all the blockchain does is it's a public ledger. It just stores transaction and stores a certain state of data. So basically says at this point in time, this data is the correct data. And then at this point in time, this data is now the new data that we store.
Yep.
And what the smart contracts can do is they can manipulate that data, and then somebody has to sign it. Obviously, it has to come from a wallet, so that we always know who manipulated the data.
So you say somebody has to sign it. What does that mean? If I had to explain this to my mother of 75, she's like, with a pen, how does that work?
Yes, exactly. I'll get back to you in a minute about that. But so basically what happens if you want to transfer a token or buy an NFT of some asset in Decentraland, basically what you do is you tell a smart contract that you want to buy it, you bid on it, or you mint it, or you do something, and then you get it. And then basically that transaction is stored as data on the blockchain. And now that data at that point in time is not mutable anymore. That is the way it is, and that is the immutability part of the blockchain. If there's an exploit or there's a security flaw in one of the smart contracts, that basically, for example, it doesn't do a good owner check of an NFT, and that makes it so that you can just buy any token, any NFT from that series, from that collection. Yeah, obviously that can happen, and then something gets stolen and you can get it back. But in general, the whole immutability part is just at this point in time, this is the correct data. And because we always want to know who does something, who buys something, we always want a replicatable state. That is the point of blockchain, or one of the pillars of blockchain. That is why everybody always has to sign their transaction. So that just says, okay, I have my wallet and I buy something, and then that means, okay, I transfer Ethereum to you, and then I get an NFT in response. Then you have to sign that transaction so that we can prove it came from you and you did it, and you are the contact, you are the user that did it. So that is
so a digital signature, right?
It's just a digital signature, but it is very similar to just putting your name on a piece of paper. It's just to say, okay, I did this. This was me, and nobody can replicate your signature because it's your signature. So there's always this form of trust between parties.
Yeah. So and Ronin, they lost 550 million. XI Infinity, I think, also lost a massive amount, and that actually happened through a fake job offer with a PDF document. So how does that work? How did they do that?
Yeah, so actually I listened to a podcast called Darknet Diaries, and they did a podcast about some crypto hacks a few months ago. I don't fully remember. So basically what happens is a lot of the time these decentralized autonomous organizations that are behind these projects, for example, Decentraland as an DAO, as a community that manages everything and it develops everything. But what usually happens is there's sometimes a core group of people that work a lot on these projects. So they update the code, or they give out tokens, or they do whatever they do. It's the same in a big organization. There's always these people that are at the center of the organization, and they ended up getting more rights to something. So they get more permissions to do something. So what they try to do is initially they try to apply for a job in this DAO to give them more permissions.
So the hackers try to apply for a job?
Exactly. Yeah. And then sometimes they get more permissions. For example, they get the permission to mint NFTs or to transfer tokens on behalf of someone else. And obviously that is not what you want as a DAO. So a lot of DAOs have protections against that there's never a single party that can do something like that. Yeah. And then the next step, what they try to do is they try to alter the code. So they try to become a developer, for example. They work on a code, they put a little exploit here and there, and it doesn't get audited, and then it ends up making its way to a upgradable smart contract.
But this is all, the example that you're explaining now is social engineering, where actually a physical person tries to get into an organization. They basically infiltrate like a spy. It's almost like we're reliving the Cold War. Just now, it's not Russia versus the United States. It's unanimous. No, not unanimous. Unanimous? Yeah, unanimous hackers.
No,
unanimous hackers.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, anonymous. That's the word.
Exactly.
That's the word I'm looking for. Anonymous hackers trying to infiltrate crypto organizations so they can alter the code, right? But I read what I have in front of me is that at XI Infinity, actually, the hack was not achieved like that, but rather through a recruitment attempt on existing employees that were then went in through a round of interviews even, and eventually they got sent a PDF with a job offer, and inside of that PDF there was spyware. So how does that work then?
Yeah, I heard that story as well, and I read about it, and actually this was also brought up in that podcast. So this is your classic phishing attack, basically. There's always still decentralized DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations. They always have this recruitment process. They do video calls and they chat with people, and there's always this social aspects of working in a DAO, like a regular organization, and that also always opens the door to phishing attacks. So what can happen is, for example, you apply to a job, you send them your resume, and then something goes wrong with the resume, or you point them to another link, or there's instantly this connection. So there is a little bit of trust, and people open your documents. And then when that happens, then it's just a regular attack vector, like we know, where maybe some spyware gets installed on your computer because you ended up clicking OK on the wrong pop-up.
It's the same kind of thing here. Whether it's your private life or your work, don't open any contracts or any documents that you don't really trust. But I guess it's hard. I mean, if I would be in a job interview potentially to go work somewhere else in this industry, and they'd send me a PDF and everything seems legit, it's very hard to avoid this. So, but I'd say let this be a warning to all those organizations out there. Think very carefully of how you go about setting up your IT infrastructure, I guess, because that's really the only solution here, right?
Yeah, so I would say so. I mean, obviously, this is a big problem in every corporation or in every organization. Even you always try to cover a lot with your IT infrastructure. For example, never automatically execute macros in Office documents. But there's always this social aspect that you just can't completely enforce. There's always this human behavior that will sometimes they will just press OK out of.
We're just dumb meatbags, and we have to accept
exactly. That's what happens. And then in some cases, people ended up installing viruses on their computer, spyware or whatever, and it will be dormant for a couple of weeks, and then it starts tracking what you type, and it figure out your password to your MetaMask, and then you have privileged access. It's how easy it can go. There's not much.
So
you can do
Jasper,
about it.
you're a Dutch guy like myself, proud, of course. There's something that I want to pose to you. There was this other Dutch, what shall I say, Dutch organization, Acutars. Not really sure how to pronounce it. Have you heard of them? They released a collection of 15,000 NFTs, the Acutar collection. It's avatars. It was released via Dutch auction. And somehow they fucked up. Excuse my French. And 34 million got locked in a smart contract and can never be taken out. So how does that work? Because, when I hear something like that, and again, I'm thinking of, my parents and some of the people that we work with, they want to get into the metaverse, and then they read something like this in the newspapers or, they hear it online, and they're like, how does it even work? How can 34 million worth of Ether in this case gets stuck in a smart contract. And can you explain perhaps a little bit of how this can come to pass and what you can do to avoid it?
Yeah, so actually we have some experience with this as well.
In a good or a bad way?
Depends. No, so the point usually is, I'm not super familiar with this exact case, but the point usually is, it used to be so that a lot of the ERC20 tokens, the regular crypto tokens on Ethereum, there used to be just a general ICO moment. So there was a lot of people buying the crypto tokens against its future trajectory. Basically, they expect the project to grow, so the value of the tokens to grow. So people would join an ICO, and then the project would use the money raised from the ICO to fund the development of the product or the service or whatever they were working on, and B, provide liquidity for the future tokens. This is the context of ERC20 tokens. So then, like, people have to buy people want to sell the token, people want to buy the token. So there has to be some dollars, and there has to be some token in order to make sure that those transactions can actually go through. And then what people used to do, or still do actually, or projects do, they automatically place some of the funds that they will earn from ICOs or maybe other activities, put it in a smart contract, lock it so that nobody can access it except maybe one smart contract or one use case or one, and that will basically lock the value for that project. And something like that can happen. And because we're dealing with smart contracts, you can basically enforce it in a way that nobody can alter it because it's a contract.
It's automated. Takes out that human factor. Yeah,
and it's on the blockchain. And then sometimes, people make mistakes. And then, for example, they sell NFTs through a Dutch auction, put the liquidity in a smart contract that will lock the tokens for them. And there's some third-party services that do it for you. That lock it for 10 years, for example, or a limited time. But they set it up wrong. And then there's no way to access it. There's no social way of enforcing it, making it so that you can get it back. So that is what can happen.
So according to the news article that I read about it and the podcast that I listened to, there was actually a hacker involved. So they had this 15,000 NFTs. They were launching the collection. They were collecting ethers that were being paid. And the hacker named user 221 became aware of an exploit, which is what he eventually triggered, thereby halting withdrawals and refunds from the contract. And that was how the 11,000 ETH plus ETH got initially locked in. However, it was only as a result of a second bug in the smart contract that when he gave back control, apparently, or said, okay, I just wanted to make you guys aware of this, that something got triggered and then the smart contract locked up completely and even, no one can get it out again. But the thing is, apparently user 221, this hacker, actually reached out to the Accutar team several times publicly ahead of the minting event to let them know that there were exploits, that there were, mistakes, bugs in the smart contract, and that they should fix them. It sounds to me like how can you let this happen if somebody's warning you for this? What are your thoughts on that?
In my experience, it happens a lot. And I think those projects are obviously to blame if they were aware of the issue and didn't solve it in time. But in general, what happened in this market is that the NFT projects were growing so quickly and the market was growing so quickly that a lot of projects joined just to try to, I don't know, maybe make some money out of it. I don't know, maybe they have bigger plans, but a lot of these project starters were very inexperienced. They basically took a smart contract somewhere from the internet, deployed it on chain, and said, "Okay, I have an NFT now." But it's still obviously deploying a smart contract you found online. It's not a hard process to do. You can just take it. There's some platforms that do it for you, even. But still, the technique behind it and making it secure and making sure it does what it's supposed to do and nothing else. It's super complex work. There's a bunch of auditing companies like Certic and a few others that just are just here to make sure that smart contracts are safe because it's such a complex job. So what happens is people just deploy it, start a project, and then they're not aware of the impact it can have if you don't have a secure or well thought out smart contract. And then, there's a lot of known vulnerabilities with with NFTs especially that can be checked for automatically as well. And then if you end up having one of those vulnerabilities in your smart contract, then it's just very rudimentary stuff for a hacker to exploit it, take it out, and people will do it. If it's there, people will abuse it.
Well, we know that. I mean, 1.25 billion was lost apparently as a result of smart contract failure and mainly exploits. So I don't know how much you're into the metaverse, apart from your expertise on smart contracts and NFTs, Jasper.
Yeah, sure. I actually did a technical review of the Sandbox and Decentraland last few weeks for a client of ours, and just went into their technical implementation of the protocol. So I can tell you a lot about that if you want.
Cool. No, yeah, let's talk about that, but let's give it some context. So I don't know if you're aware of this, but recently there's been the founding of a Open Standards Forum for the Metaverse. So Metaverse Open Standard Forum, which was initiated by the Coronas Group, which is a collective that was founded in 2000 by some really big tech giants, some of which don't even exist anymore, I think. But Apple was there and some other companies, Microsoft, etc., NVIDIA. Yep. And they now founded this Metaverse Open Standards Forum. Now, currently, NVIDIA, Epic Games, with Unreal Engine, Meta are part of it. IKEA is in it. There's 650 members, of which around 200 principal members, which is members that are actually actively engaging and voting in the whole thing. Because there's, also the normal members that are basically just, general audience, I guess, that takes a lesser, active role. We're one of those organizations. So your Open Metaverse here is one of those organizations, the principal member organization. So we take a very active role in this. But if we're talking about smart contracts, right, and we're just talking about all these ways in which, despite the blockchain being immutable, smart contracts can still, have bugs, exploits, can be abused, social engineering can impact it. In how far do you think, how useful is it? Or what things, could be improved by the development of open standards? And can we develop open standards for smart contracts at all? I mean, does that even work? What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I think that's an excellent question. And you can't talk about smart contracts without bringing up Open Zeppelin, I think. Open Zeppelin, obviously, they have a lot of good implementations of ERC standards and some alternative standards as well. So that basically means they make a very safe implementation of a crypto token, a very safe implementation of a NFT smart contract, just general use cases or functionality. They create very safe, reliable, secure, non-hackable, 100% top stuff for smart
Open Zeppelin.
Open Zeppelin, exactly. And I think there's a few alternatives, but Open Zeppelin is by far the biggest one. And that is something you see in general with blockchain and smart contract development. A lot of the functionality, a lot of the standard functionality gets basically standardized really quickly through an ERC, and then somebody comes up with a safe implementation, and then everybody copies that, which is very good practice because that just makes sure nobody is reinventing the wheel, doing stuff unsafely. And we just know that if you inherit those standards, that you're doing the right things basically, and you have a high quality product. And I think Open Zeppelin is one of the leading companies, and but there's some others as well. And I think something similar will happen for more metaverse stuff. So, for example,
because let's take a step back. You talked about Decentraland and Sandbox, and you did an audit. Am I correct?
No, it's not an audit, but just a technical review. So it just
technical review.
Yeah, we just went through their infrastructure and saw how the smart contracts work together. Where there's some, there was just knowledge gathering, just to see how these products work exactly, because usually it's really easy to go to a website and then just look at the marketing basically, or where they want to be, but then really understanding the protocol and maybe its limiting factors or differences between the different protocols. That is really, that sometimes gets really complex because there's all these smart contracts everywhere scattered and not non-documented code. So basically what we did is just do basically a comparison between the sandbox and Decentraland and see what their differences are, especially on smart contracts stuff.
Kind of want to know what came out of this analysis. Can you share anything, or is this all highly confidential?
Client work. I won't send you the document, but in general, we just took a look at how they manage the different assets and land auctioning. So, for example, the sandbox uses an 1155 contract, ERC 1155, which is a standard for multi-token NFTs, which some of the listeners might have seen before in OpenSea. While Decentraland uses ERC 721, which is the standard, the initial NFT standard. And it was really interesting for us to see why they made the different choices. Why did one of them go for 1155 while the other went for ERC 721? Because they have the
How
same.
did you figure out what drove their decision?
So I'm not sure what drove their decision. I can only see that they are having the same technical challenges and they just decided to solve it differently. So what they do, obviously they have their land auctions or whatever they call it, but Decentraland calls it land. And on top of that, they have assets usually. So there might be characters, swords, whatever you can come up with. But those are completely different use cases, right? Because a piece of land somewhere is always unique. It's always a XY coordinate and it's always one. So those NFTs are ERC 721 NFTs, so it's always unique. But what 1155, sorry for the abstract names, but
no, it's okay.
What 1155 allows us to do is that we can have multiple of a single token. So we can say, okay, we have one golden sword, but we have 20 silver swords. So that is that is what 1155 allows us to do. And both the Sandbox and Decentraland have a system like that, where they have 100 of something, or 1,000 of something, or 1,000,000 of something, which they call assets. And basically what Decentraland does is, okay, for every collection, so for every shirt or every whatever, they make a new 721 contract, and they do that completely automated through forwarders, factories, collection managers. So they have a whole bunch of smart contracts that make sure that those ERC 721 contracts gets deployed and gets constructed basically, while the Sandbox chooses to just create an 1155 contract and merge it with a 721 contract. It's super complex.
Okay.
They went their own route basically. But that allows them to just keep adding new collections and new items to their single NFT smart contract. So Decentraland manages maybe 1,000 or 1,000,000 different smart contracts for their different collections, while the Sandbox only manages one. And
I mean, in your professional opinion, which one seems to be the best, and why?
So between the two, I don't have a strong opinion, but in general, because the thing I like about Decentraland is how everything is super decentralized. They set up everything, and all the smart contracts we could find. They didn't have a private owner; it was all owned by the DAO, and actually by different committees within the DAO, where people can get appointed to. So it was super decentralized. Whereas the Sandbox was a little bit more centralized, and not all the code is open source, which was, or we couldn't find all the code. Maybe it is open source, but not easily findable.
Okay.
So that's a little bit less decentralized. But on the other hand, I think the 1155 implementation for managing assets is a lot cheaper. So it's a lot, just easier to use, a lot cheaper. I think technically it's more elegant than managing a million ERC 721 contracts.
Talking about the cheaper, I just have a question, and obviously I understand that you, like me, don't have a glass ball. You can't see the future, but if in the future, say, if gas prices go up again for Ether, because I think that's what you're talking about in terms of cost, right?
Yeah, exactly. Gas price.
Which one would be in a better position, or would both suffer eventually? How does it,
Both have incentives on layer 2 chains like Polygon. Basically, they try to save costs by moving towards other chains, which I think is the future anyway for more specialized sort of para chains as
multi-chain.
Yeah, multi-chain specialization. Mainnet will stay expensive and will become even more expensive. At least the Ethereum mainnet we're talking about here will get a lot more expensive. So obviously, currently the 1155 contracts are in a better position price-wise, or cost-wise, I should say. I think, at least, I don't have a full grasp on how much they're paying both. But you can solve that by moving to two different chains and basically offloading some of your expenses to different chains.
All right, cool. I had another topic here, but I think we're going to save this one for a future conversation when you come back, Jasper. I had something here on multi-layered smart contract security. So unless you say like I'm super enthusiastic about that, I'm gonna skip that one over.
You can always ask me anything. Yeah.
Oh, we will. Don't worry. Look, we went really deep into very technical stuff, right? Let's take this a few steps back. This is just me asking you, personal questions on your vision for the future. I mean, obviously we're seeing a lot of use of smart contracts in very creative ways already. You just described, for example, how the Sandbox and Decentraland are very creatively in different ways using smart contracts. But if you go into this metaverse future, right, and we want to create interoperability, where do you see some really exciting opportunities to use smart contracts to do things in new and novel ways that can really, change how we interact with this metaverse, future? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think in general, smart contracts, especially if you combine it with metaverses, can solve a lot of, or basically do a lot of regular stuff we do every day in our everyday lives completely different. For example, we don't need notary offices. We don't need banks even. We don't need accountants and all these boring jobs. They can all disappear because we can all...
I don't think that these people are happy to hear this, Jasper, but go on.
No, but it's not like the invention of the car made people, gave people less jobs. It gave them different jobs, obviously. We know that now.
Yeah.
And it's not like it will disappear tomorrow, but it could. In a perfect future, I think like everything is automated on smart contracts, all the different works, and people have time and energy to spend on more fun things like creating stuff for the metaverse or doing the same jobs they used to do in their regular life in the metaverse, obviously. And I think blockchain smart contracts can really basically do that at some point in the future. But what I hope that will happen is to have some sort of basically some sort of convergence where things will come together, work together, and be interoperable for that to happen. So, for example, we've seen some like what is your Open Metaverse is doing with trying to combine different metaverses together using a single standard, or maybe even you can. I have a lot of ideas for that as well, but
okay.
That is something that we aren't really seeing with the underlying infrastructure, with the blockchain technology and the smart contracts. For example, Solana is getting super popular, but there's no way of communicating. Well, there is, but there's not a really good way of communicating between Ethereum and Solana, for example. And then if you have one metaverse that is running on using the Solana infrastructure and another metaverse that is using the Ethereum infrastructure, it just gets super complicated to work together. So I just hope the entire blockchain metaverse a group of people worldwide will come together and just come up with a single solution for everything at some point. Obviously, that's a dream. Keep it decentralized so that everybody keeps working on it in their own from their own point.
So here's I'm going to put this little idea in your head. Hopefully, have you seen online? Have you been following the developments around DALL-E Mini?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah.
I have. Yeah.
So for those of you listening that are not aware, OpenAI, company founded by Elon Musk, which he left later on, has developed this online artificial intelligence based on GPT-3, which was a different artificial intelligence kind of, how do you call that, protocol? I don't know. And GPT-3 basically, is capable of giving extremely realistic human responses, can write text. So you could, to give an example, you can tell GPT-3, write me a poem of 6 lines telling somebody that I love them in the style of, a famous poet. Let's say, I don't know. I can't come up with a poet right now. I have a brain freeze. But, anyone. Salvador Dali, who's not a poet but a painter. But you could say that. And then GPT-3 would generate that text. And it's really, really a little creepy even how accurate they can do that. Now, Dali is an artificial intelligence based on GPT-3, but does the same thing for images. So basically you tell it, I want an image of a purple cat riding a blue cloud in a river of wine floating down to Jerusalem. I don't know, just coming up with some random shit. And then DALL-E will generate not just one, but thousands of pictures that show you this. And it can get really, really crazy. Now, here's the idea I wanted to put in your head, Jasper. We're talking about smart contracts now. What if 5 years from now, we combine AI like GPT-3 with smart contract technology? So we can tell the AI, I want a smart contract and I want it to do this and this and this and this. And then it can just instantly generate, 1,000 smart contracts that would solve that problem in different ways.
That would be perfect. I mean, that will happen.
That's going to happen
sometime. Yeah, of course.
That's going to happen.
We've already seen GitHub Copilot, which basically does the GPT-3, uses the GPT-3, a model for generating code.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem with like JavaScript, front-end code, or even some other codes is that it's super abstract and can go everywhere. There's a million ways of doing stuff.
Yeah.
While smart contracts are super standardized. I think for a lot of the contracts, they're super similar, and a lot has already been done. And there's actually the ERC and the EIP as basically standard and proposals. They're being written down by humans. Basically, they say, okay, what do we need next? What do we want next for the ecosystem? And then people start developing it and people start working with it. But the first part, you can debate if it's if maybe AI will take over that at some point as well. I think it's possible, but I think there will be some ethical questions about that. But the second part, like the development part and just creating the smart contract and creating the standards from the text that somebody supplied, that will 100% be automated. Maybe not in 5 years. I think we thought that was going to be solved 5 years ago from already, but maybe it is in 5 years. But I think that will happen for smart contracts because they're so standardized. And there's also already a lot of tooling to create regular contracts in the Web2 world. And there's just a matter of time that they will also switch over to smart contracts.
Right.
But
so,
I think
so what would you say to accountants and notaries?
Yeah, actually, we're doing some workshops as well at accountant firms to see, okay, what does that mean for your company? Not only for your clients, but also for basically your job. And what we see is if everybody would use blockchain as a default infrastructure, so even like the tax authority and all companies and all transactions would use blockchain, then there's absolutely no accountancy necessary because we can make blockchain transactions.
Well, maybe no accountancy in the form as we currently know it, right? But I mean, technically, right? You and me can download Photoshop, right? And we can do our photo editing ourselves. In fact, Photoshop even has some really smart stuff in there. Do it automatically. I can go to Canva. I can just throw some pictures in. I can create some beautiful. But there's still a place for real experts. They use these same tools, but they can achieve much more elegant solutions or elegant end results. So I would say that, yes, for the most mundane, simple, stupid, don't get me wrong, but, repetitive accountancy work or notary work, we won't need that anymore. And it's also, we're not going to pay thousands of euros to get that done anymore. But I would say that there will always be a place for, real masters of an art with, a level of creativity. Even if we use AI, because these AIs need to be directed, just like, making a beautiful film, anybody can pick up a camera. But making a real blockbuster movie requires a director at the helm that really understands how things come together. And I think I think that for the next decade, that's what we're really going to figure out, is that that's where humanity has its place, because everything else we can probably just start handing over to computers.
Exactly. And it's maybe my final point I want to make about this is, I think with everything, we're always moving towards a kind of state where we try to automate everything. So we do that for development, we do that for mundane, everyday tasks, even like doing the dishwasher, cleaning your floor. It's all automated now, but it doesn't mean you don't have anything to do anymore as a human. You can still be an expert there, or move on to a higher quality job, or it will only provide more options and not less. I think that's what we've always seen, and I think that the same will happen with blockchain technology and metaverses and everything that is being developed right now.
Yeah, I think there's a great opportunity there for true creatives. Even creatives, even if you wouldn't think about an accountant as a creative, but I think that it will just raise the art to a new level. Rather than become obsolete, you can start looking at a different level of detail and focus on that and build on that and improve on that. Yeah, I agree.
100%.
Jasper, we've been talking for a good 55 minutes. It's been extremely interesting. At times, I'm not going to lie, it was challenging for me to stay really with you. You seem to have very in-depth technical knowledge. Thank you so much for that. I have a few final questions. First of all, cats or dogs?
Dogs, 100%. I always had both when I was younger. We used to have cats and dogs, but 100% dogs. I love them.
Okay, cool. Second question to the listeners, to anybody watching the show. Do you have any recommendations for books, television documentaries, or anything that you think they should really be watching or reading?
I think my favorite book I read recently was The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. I think that's I actually read that one. I think it's a very popular book, but I just love it. I just love the mentality of just doing whatever feels good and you think is important, and it's okay to feel like shit sometimes, and then just accept that you feel like shit and you'll feel better again tomorrow. I think that's just a very positive book.
I like it. I love that. For everybody out there, if you've been listening to this episode of the State of the Metaverse, thank you so much for joining us. You can obviously find our episodes on your favorite platform, be that Spotify, Apple iTunes, or anywhere else. Obviously, also always available on our YouTube channel, Your Open Metaverse. You can find us on Twitter at YOM Metaverse. That's Y-O and then 1M. Metaverse. We're also on Instagram, sometimes posting some crazy pictures there. In fact, we're even on TikTok, and Bo and Jeroen keep making crazy videos there, trying to get us to go viral. So if you want to help us out, if you want to support the show, if you want to learn more about the metaverse, learn more about this whole space, make sure to like, subscribe, follow, share it to your friends, send it to them on WhatsApp until they don't want to talk to you anymore because you can't stop talking about the metaverse. Once more, thank you so much for joining the show, and see you guys next time.